Welcome to another author interview at In-House Publishing. This one's a little bit unique because all the way from New Zealand is Dion Jensen. G'day, brother, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
Not too bad, man, not too bad. Now, you guys don't know this, but it's about 5 in the morning here, and Dion's in Queensland for about 3 days. So I'm grabbing the opportunity to have a chat to him about this book because this is groundbreaking stuff and I wasn't going to miss this opportunity. So Dion, we've got the good news about PTSD. This is quite a critical book for today's time. It's very, very topical. How about you tell us what this is about?
Right, so for those of you that have dealt with trauma and know about post-traumatic stress disorder, it's always seen as a negative. And why it's seen as a negative? Because it's so closely linked to veteran suicide. We have a huge issue in the world around the moment of veteran suicide, and now that we're in Australia, this year alone we've had 58 suicides in the veteran community. It's enough.
That's pretty unacceptable in my mind.
Yeah, it is, and we haven't addressed this since World War I, all the way through World War II, through every other conflict, through the Vietnam veterans to our contemporary veterans today. We still haven't addressed it.
Let's talk about that for a minute. My grandfather fought in World War II. He was in Africa. I remember when I was a little bit younger, after he passed away, I went and hit my grandmother up about a whole lot of, what did he tell you? And even she told me, he never wanted to talk about the war. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think, what's your opinion on this sort of thought pattern?
Well, look, that's one of the main issues, is the guys don't and the girls don't talk about it. They try and separate themselves. That was me over there, this is me here, and they really have a problem adjusting when they get back. Amongst ourselves, we talk about it to a certain degree, but that's generally only when people have had quite a few drinks, and that leads to other issues.
Right, okay. Well, let's talk about you for a minute. What's your background? To write about this, you've got to actually have gone through some stuff yourself. Tell us about you.
Right, so start off in the army. My father was in the army, my grandfather's a World War II veteran, so I came through the army as a young man, back there in 1st Battalion, Palmerston North. And then I did 7 years in the police, and then I went to Iraq for 3 years, 2004, 2007, protecting people. And then as a result of all of that, I was exposed to trauma quite a lot. And I didn't think I had any issues, but after a few things happened, I'm starting to have nightmares, flashbacks. I was very, very angry. Very, very quick to turn, and people were saying that was a disorder. I did 2 tests. First test said I had post-traumatic stress disorder, hyperarousal, hypervigilance, which people would have dealt with it, they will know what that means. And when I did the test the second time, I did it in a different mindset and I was fine. And that's when I sat there and went, hang on a second, something's going on here. And then when I really started investigating it for myself, I created a concept in my mind that was able to take all the negatives and flip it into a positive, based on how we were trained in our own language. So I did that for myself very successfully, and I came up with this concept. And my friend Daryl Diptatheri was killed in Iraq 10 years ago next year. And for the last 9 years, I've been building Success for Soldiers, building online programs, just trying to help with all the issues that we would have. And while I was doing that and talking to people, I was noticing that other people were saying trouble sleeping, nightmares, flashbacks, anger, all that sort of thing. So when I started studying it and looking at it, everything to do with this condition, which I disagree is a disorder anyway, is all written by someone else's language, which is normally psychology. So when I was able to interpret that back through my concept, I found that this could help other people, and I started sharing the concept. But when I shared the concept, everyone came racing straight back and said, "Where's the book?" And I'm like, I'm not writing a book. So then I decided...
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I have. So then I ended up writing the book, and I fully exposed myself, which is difficult for guys. You listen to people like Brene Brown, the key to connection is vulnerability. Vulnerability is a bad word in the military and the police because we don't want to be vulnerable. So unless it's someone really, really close to you, unless you've got that battle buddy to speak to, if you can't have the conversation to start with, you become isolated. If you become isolated and cut off from everyone else, you're cut off from that team, that family that you used to operate in. And once you're isolated and depression, anxiety and everything else, it's a very short step to suicide. So to come back around to where I started, I found a way to make it a positive. And when I ran it through the clinicians, they said this actually matches accepted psychology practices, specifically cognitive behavior therapy, CBT. So while I'm showing this to psychologists, saying, "Oh, Dion, I see what you've done. You've taken Carl Jung's archetypes and you've made your own and you've used your own language." And I sat there and went, "What?" I had no idea what they were talking about. And obviously I do now because it all matches. And the exciting thing about the book is because people don't want to talk about it to start with, they can grab the book in the safety of their own mind and they can go through it. And the partners can read it and understand what's going on, and the kids can understand it. And there's processes and exercises in the books. I'm a trainer, where you can go through and create your own characters. And that's where the power has been. But people are coming from everywhere now, not from military and police backgrounds, second, third, fourth generation, like, is that why Granddad was like that? Is that why Uncle Jim was like that? Why didn't Uncle Jim talk about the war? Why did Uncle Jim come back drunk all the time on Anzac Day and beat Mama? You know, all these sorts of things, so they can see, I understand. But those negative reactions that we have are actually a positive in the correct environment.
Behind every author, Dion, there's a why. There's a personal why we bring our books to life. What's yours, man?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We dress nice, we come down, and we all wear masks. Yeah, so anyone that's dealt with this, you become a master of the mask. You know, so the conversation that we just had, or the mechanics of the book, and it's interesting you ask me that question now, because we all know that it hides something. And what it was for me is, I started building successful soldiers after my mate Dip got killed, and I still talk to him at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's still my partner as I go through and I build this. In regards to this particular book on post-traumatic stress, I'd come back from Iraq, went through a whole lot of anger issues, and thought I was fine. And then I'm in the kitchen in my house in Palmerston North, and I'm doing the dishes, and the conscious mind is away with the fairy, so to speak. And I'm doing the dishes, and my 5-year-old daughter was sneaking up behind me to give me a fright. Now, she thought it would be funny, but every time we hear a loud noise and someone sneaks up on us, it's generally someone trying to hurt us. So my 5-year-old daughter is about to give Daddy a fright. She thinks this is going to be fun, loves her Daddy, we're going to have a good time. She sneaks up behind me and she goes, boo, and I spin around like she's a threat, and she sees the look in my eyes, and it scared her, and broke my heart. So that's why I wrote it, because a lot of families are going through that. A lot of families know when Dad's at that stage. A lot of families know when Mum's at that stage, and they've had to grow up around it, or walk on eggshells, or not be home, when Dad drinks. So my personal why was, I don't want to scare my kids, man, And the good news for those of you that might be in that at the moment is, when you sit down and you explain it to them, and I'll put this in comics in the book, when you explain it to them, they get it. So the good news is, my daughter knows Daddy used to be a soldier, Daddy used to be a police officer, Daddy is a protector. He's there to protect people from bad people, and bad people try and hurt you. So when bad people try and hurt Daddy, they do it, it's normally very loud and it hurts. So I said, Bubba, if you sneak up on me and you just do something loud, I think you're a bad person, you're trying to hurt me. And Daddy's a fighter, so if you try and hurt Daddy, I'll fight. And my kids know this as well, and I teach them to be the same. We're nice to everyone, but if someone tries to hurt our friends or our family, we fight. We're not a victim family, we're warriors. So she goes, oh, I understand now, Daddy, And then when you take it further, these skills are fantastic skills to have in the correct environment. If I'm out there with my wife and family coming from the movies, and a bunch of idiots try and hurt my family, I have the skills to recognize it first and get out of the way, which is obviously what we want to do first.
Absolutely.
But if it happens too fast and my family's at risk, then I have the skills to instantly get in there and deal with it, because I'm highly trained. I've saved my mum's life, I've saved my sister's life, reacting in instant situations where if I hadn't have been there, they would be dead. So these skills that we have that are manifesting in the negative are absolutely a positive in the correct environment with the correct training when you understand this. But that bit that still hurts, that reason why, is for my family and in memory of my mate that got killed.
This leads me to my next question, because I think there's a lot of denial that goes on when someone is suffering from PTSD. We're not just talking about the military, we're talking about someone that's been through trauma here in a civilised country where maybe they've been robbed or they've been assaulted, whatever, and talking about it and being able to step past and say, hey, look, I think I've got a problem here. That's one of the biggest issues. I've done a lot of books that confront suicide, yet nobody talks about them. And this is, what's your vision, man? Like, you've obviously made a bit of an impact in New Zealand. You're here now doing the same thing. What's your ultimate vision? Where are you taking this book? Where are you taking your program? Where are you taking you?
All right, so I wasn't supposed to go this way. So as part of what I was doing, I was like, I'll create this book, I'll create this resource that people can go and then link into everything, and I was going to carry on. When I brought the resource out, those that understand it and those that resonate with my particular story, because it's not going to help everybody. We all know that with everyone's story, you're going to resonate with someone where it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the vision was initially just to put a tool and a resource out there that would help people, and then I carry on teaching, speaking, and running programs, because I believe you have to train someone to an outcome. You can't speak someone to an outcome. I mean, writing a book, you know, you can tell your story. There's so many other components. So that's through training. So now that people are coming and say, what do I do now? Because once they've read the book, they're like, you get me, Dion. You understand me, you're speaking my language. And they say three things. Thank God it's not just me. It's the first thing that comes out, oh, thank God, I thought it was just me that thought like that and had those dreams. And that was my first response. The second one is, thank God I'm not crazy. Yeah, I'm not crazy, because this is absolutely normal. Going through trauma, and it's a very, very good point that you bring up. Trauma is trauma. Doesn't matter if it's combat trauma, sexual trauma. One of the groups I work with Loretta Somerville, is rapes, sexual assaults. That's trauma. If we were to walk out here now and we watch a little kid get run over, for example,
we would face it.
Exactly right, but we don't compare it. But there's such a competition now. A special forces soldier that deals with trauma in war comes back with a medal. A nurse, day in, day out, patching people up, ambulance officers, cops and all the rest of it, exposed to trauma. All that trauma is equal in my eyes and in the eyes of the book, so it's not a competition. But the language of the book is written for the military. The next book after this is for the police, and then emergency services, and then partners, because it can just roll on, because the secret has been the interpretation. And now that we know matches psychology, it's very, very powerful. So went through New Zealand all the way up to releasing the book in Parliament, so they're aware of it now, and I'm working with the Defence Force and other organisations, sharing information. So we're at the point now where they're considering, do they use this officially as a resource?
Awesome.
And we know what that process can be like. For anything in New Zealand, it takes a little bit of time.
Sure do.
Australia has always been supportive, and the UK's on the radar now. All my friends in the US are waiting, so I spend a lot of time with US guys. But I don't want to start in the US until each area has had their opportunity to go through. And a big one is, wherever you are, the people that you're helping, that's where you have to have systems and processes in place.
Very much so.
Because if we release the book and all these people come racing through and go, Dion, I get the book and all the rest of it, what do I do next? Going from awareness to action, that's my vision. So between someone being aware of what's going on, and there's a lot of awareness now, to taking action. Once someone takes action, that's expressing an enormous amount of trust. So they must have faith in whatever they take action with is going to work. But there's a gap of 5 other things that I identified, and I've created a program. So big global vision that we're up to now is the processes from the book I've built into a program called the Victory Program, because we need to have an expectation that we can win, because that's our background. We're here to win. But everything that we hear about suicide is defeatist. Everything that we hear about PTSD is defeatist. You're damaged, broken, you're either going to flip out and kill everyone, or you're going to fade away and kill yourself. So there's no expectation of victory. No one's put a stake in the ground and says, we can beat this. Not just cope, not just get through the day. And your denial that you're talking about is a coping mechanism. I'll put that in that little box, I'll chain it up, and I'll keep it out of the way, and we won't talk about it. Then I don't have to deal with it. And you've got all these boxes of things you haven't unpacked. And in psychology, they talk about unpacking a lot. So that's one way of coping. I'm not here to cope. I don't go into battle, I don't go into a fight to survive it. I go in it to win it. And that's the Anzac attitude. So the States has dealt with this for a long time, the UK, Australia is really front line, and if they don't do something different, they will end up exactly the same. So we've never had this many psych resources and theorem and doctors and all these tools and resources, yet as they go up, so do suicides. So it's not the fact that we have all these things that can help. The issue is people aren't accessing them, and the programs that, look, to be fair, there are psychologists and psychiatrists that will never need to use this book, that they treat people and they're fantastic. But I don't care how qualified and how effective you are, someone doesn't walk through your door, you can't help them.
Yeah, I have my own opinion about that, and I think I commend you for your social responsibility. I say to authors, start from the inside out when you're marketing your book and you're promoting your journey and your message. And you've clearly done that in New Zealand. Now you're doing this in Australia, and then you're obviously going to take it country by country. And I think that's admirable and responsible of you to do so. This is not a resource to make you understand it. It's a resource to help find a solution. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, what we need to now tell you guys is that with the amazing technology at our fingertips, you don't have to walk into a bookstore, pick up this book and put a label on your head. Clearly you can buy these books online, you can start off slow and work your way into it until you contact someone like Dion and take it to the next level. So tell us about New Zealand and I'll tell them about Australia. Where can they get this book in New Zealand?
Okay, so for New Zealand, everywhere you're going to go to get this book is yoursubconsciousbodyguards.com. So when you go to that website, there'll be the countries there. If you click on New Zealand, you can just order it there, it'll get shipped out. You click on Australia, it'll get ordered and shipped out, and that'll all get taken care of by in-house publishing. And then there's an online version on Amazon, but every place to get this book is on yoursubconsciousbodyguards.com.
That's the website at the bottom of the screen. Man, I want to thank you so much for flying all the way over here and having a chat. And this is my signed copy. We did a bit of a book swap. I'll treasure this and get in touch if you guys want to know more information. I'm happy to put you in touch with Dion. Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it, Rich. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.